Hey everybody, what's going on? So in this section, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to handle objections when you're using cold emails. So not everyone is always going to respond positively and want to take a meeting right away. And sometimes they just need a little help understanding why exactly they should take a meeting with you. And so that is what this lesson is all about. Now, here's the thing. The first thing we're going to come up with is that a lot of times the prospect is going to ask for more information, right? Because they're not sure whether or not they want to take a meeting with you. And so when the prospect asks for more information, here's what you want to keep in mind. You do not want to send a white paper, PDF, pitch deck, or anything like that, because you can sell a lot better over the phone or talking to them in person than any white paper or video can, right? Because, when it comes to B2B sales, you actually got to talk to them human to human. And if you rely on a white paper or a chart or a video to sell your product or service, you're not there to answer any of their questions. So that's why I would refrain from sending them extra material. What you want to do is you just want to reply back suggesting that they take a meeting. So here's the thing. People are very protective of their time, right? Everybody is. So they may not want to agree to a meeting unless they feel confident it's going to benefit them in some way. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they feel confident that they're going to buy, but they are confident that they're going to learn something new that can potentially help their business. So handling objections is really just making the prospect feel confident about spending time with you. And if you could get them emotionally to feel like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to buy something from this guy, but I want to hear what he says because it might be valuable, then that is exactly the place you want to take them. So let's give you an example. The prospect might say something like, hey, Patrick, sounds interesting. Can you send over some more info about this? Thanks, John, right? He's not responding negatively. He just wants to learn a little bit more about you before he actually agrees to a meeting with you. So what you can do, you can say something like, hey, John, great hearing from you. I appreciate your curiosity and wanting to learn more about how we can help you XYZ, and I'm happy to help. Now, for us to see if there's really a fit to work together, the quickest way to do it is to have a quick conversation over the phone so I can learn a little bit more about your current situation. So if that works for you, let me know what your calendar looks like. In this part, I'm not sending him a white paper even though he asked for it. I'm just saying like, hey, I can send you all these things, but it's actually faster for us just to talk over the phone. So if it makes sense to talk, let me know what your calendar looks like. And so that's pretty much it. You can also add things like, hey, if it makes sense, we could talk for a quick 10 minutes to see whether or not it's a fit to work together, right? So basically, you just want to say anything that will get them on the phone with you. You do not want to send them information, because I can't remember a situation where I sent a white paper to somebody and then there's like, oh, I would love to take a meeting with you. It never happened. So that's why you just want to just keep pushing for the meeting. And if they don't take the meeting after you push for it, then they're probably not going to be a fit, or they're just not interested in what you have at the moment, and that's totally fine, and you can move on. Now, if the prospect says they already work with a competitor, the prospect might say, hey, Patrick, thanks, but we're already working with Salesforce, John, right? So let's say they confuse your software with being a competitor to Salesforce, which it may not be. And so what you want to do is you want to change the perspective and position your product or service as something that's complementary to whatever they're using, rather than being something that's competitive, right? And if you're directly competing against somebody, then you would use a different tactic. But let's say there's some overlap, but you can help someone out. You can help them even though they're using someone that they perceive as a competitor. So you can say something like, hey, Megan, great hearing from you. Salesforce is a great platform, and I'm sure you're really happy with it. What's interesting is that a lot of our clients actually use Salesforce as their CRM and integrate it with Outbound to send automated emails to prospects at scale. I'm not sure if this is something you were looking to do as well, but if so, let me know what your calendar looks like. Thanks, Patrick. So if I'm selling Outreach.io, which helps people scale their emails, then it doesn't necessarily compete exactly with Salesforce. They actually work together really well. So you want to reframe the position and say, hey, we're not really competing with Salesforce. People actually help generate more revenue by combining the two softwares. So if it makes sense to talk, let me know if you're interested, right? So that's pretty much the energy and feeling you want to convey to the other person. You don't have to copy my words exactly, but again, I just want to give you the framework of how to do this so you can, use your own style for your own product or service. Now, if you're directly competing with somebody, you could say something like, hey, Salesforce is a really great software and I'm sure you're really happy with it. Now, in the future, if let's say anything changes or you want to see what your options are, let me know if it makes sense to talk. Right? So in those situations, it's very uncommon that someone's going to completely replace their software unless they're unhappy with it, right? So you might want to say like, hey, a lot of people that have Salesforce are unhappy with it. I'm not sure if you fall into that bucket, but if so, let me know what your calendar looks like to talk, and we could talk about whether or not, it makes sense to work together, right? So whatever the situation is, there's always a way to get the prospect to take a meeting with you. But if they're working with a competitor and they're completely happy with it, it's very unlikely that they're going to switch. And I actually would recommend just going for other people who aren't working with that competitor. But in situations where it's a compliment, then that's a whole different story. Prospects might also have some objections where they say, hey, we don't have the budget or we don't have the resources, right? So in some cases, you want to just move on and follow up with the prospect another time, because if they don't have money to buy whatever it is you're selling, doesn't matter how much you talk to them, they're not going to buy it, right? However, for larger companies, they may not have the budget, let's say this quarter, but maybe next quarter, the budget is going to renew and they're going to have money for it later. So in some cases, you might want to take a meeting with them and say, hey, look, I know you don't have the budget, but I want to show you what we can do for you so that in the future, if it comes to it, you can reach back out to me when the time is right. And that's pretty much how you want to do it, because you want to build that relationship with the hopes that they're going to buy later, right? So someone may not buy now, but because they know about you, or they might keep you in mind for when the opportunity arises. So an example is, hey, John, great hearing from you. I appreciate your transparency and totally understand. Even if you currently don't have the resources now, I'd still love to show you exactly how we can help you do XYZ so that you're aware of what's available when the timing is better. So if it still makes sense to talk, let me know what your calendar looks like. Thanks, Patrick. So here I'm kind of reframing the situation where I'm saying, hey, it's okay that you don't have the budget. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to show you what we have and what's available so that in the future, if you are ready or if you do have the budget, then you already know the options. And when you kind of put it like that, they might think like, oh, well, it doesn't hurt to take the meeting because I might need this later. So by positioning in that way, you're creating that FOMO experience, fear of missing out. So it's an opportunity for the other person to learn about your product or service with no pressure to buy. And if they're just learning, then maybe a year down the line, they'll be ready to buy your services. So that's pretty much how you're going to handle these objections. And so no matter what objections people give you, because always, like, depending on your sale, people will give you different objections. You just have to craft a way to reframe the situation. And you would just want to make sure that the goal of your response email is just to get a meeting with them, right? So whatever it is you got to say, whether you could say something like, hey, you don't have to buy it. I just want to share with you what I have. Or, hey, we're not a competitor to them. We actually, a lot of our clients use that software with our software. So whatever it is, you just want to make sure you're asking for the meeting at the end of the response. And, not a lot of people will actually, take you up on this when you're doing objection handling, because there might be a really big reason for why they don't take the meeting. And that's totally fine, but other people might take it. So if you have the opportunity to do it, I would say have some templates ready to go for certain objections that always come up, and then a certain percentage of people will take the meeting, and then a certain percentage will actually buy. So that's pretty much the framework you have to have when it comes to being successful in handling objections and turning people who need a little help and motivating them to take a meeting with you. And so with that said, that's everything we got to cover in this lesson, and I'm going to see you guys in the next.